Are you facing a warning in Android Studio that says your schema export directory is not provided? If so, you're not alone. Today, we're going to tackle this common issue with the Android database component room and show you how to resolve it. I totally get how frustrating it can be when you're trying to compile your project and you get hit with warnings. It can feel like a roadblock, especially when you're eager to see your app in action. You're definitely not the only one dealing with this. Here's the specific question we're addressing today. One user asked, "Why am I getting a warning that the schema export directory is not provided?" They mentioned that they have configured everything, but still encounter this warning. Sound familiar? Let's dive into the details. So what does this warning mean? Essentially, it indicates that the room annotation processor needs to know where to export the database schema. If you don't specify a location, it can't generate the necessary files, which can affect your app's database management. And stick around. At the end of this video, I'll share the best practices for handling schema exports that will keep your app running smoothly. To address the warning regarding the schema export directory, the user should first decide whether they want to export the database schema. If they do, they will need to provide the location for the schema export. If the user chooses to export the schema, they need to add the room.schema location argument to their build.gradle file. This argument specifies the directory where the schema files will be saved. Alternatively, if the user does not want to export the schema, they can set export schema to false in the room database annotation. This will suppress the warning. Finally, the user should consider best practices. Exporting the schema is recommended for version control and database migrations. It helps keep track of changes in the database structure. Fun fact, did you know that the room library is named after the concept of a room in a house? Just like a room organizes your belongings, room organizes your database entities. Now, let's look at the answers provided by other users. Now, what's the best practice? If you're actively developing your app and expect to make changes to your database schema, it's a good idea to export the schema. This way, you can track changes over time and ensure your database evolves smoothly. And there you have it. You now know how to handle the schema export warning in Room. Remember, whether you choose to export the schema or not, understanding your options is key. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks. An alternative approach shared by another user involves configuring the Android Gradle settings directly. They suggest using the Java compile options to specify the room schema location argument, pointing to a schema's directory in the project. Now, let's see a response from a different user. An alternative approach suggested by another user involves configuring your project to specify the schema export directory. They recommend using the Kotlin DSL in your build.gradle file. That's it for that response. Let's explore another one. One user suggests that if you've recently moved classes to different packages, you need to update the argument type in your navigation component. For example, change the arg type from the old package path to the new one. That's it for that answer. Let's take a look at another one. An alternative approach suggested by another user is to ensure that your room class is correctly added to the room database child class. Specifically, you should include your entities in the @database annotation. That's it for that answer. Let's take a look at another one. An alternative solution provided by another user suggests configuring the annotation processor to specify the schema export directory. They recommend adding a line in your build.gradle file to set the room.schema location argument.